Ancient Egypt did not survive by chance, but by building one of history's most controlled and ordered societies. Along the Nile, survival depended on coordination, obedience, and the careful management of people and resources. The river gave life, but only predictable systems ensured that life could continue generation after generation. Floods could nourish crops or destroy them, forcing early Egyptians to value order above individual freedom. From this uncertainty emerged a civilization obsessed with balance, stability, and the preservation of cosmic harmony. Egyptians believed chaos was the greatest threat, capable of unraveling both society and the universe itself. To prevent disorder, authority became centralized, visible, and deeply embedded in everyday life. At the center stood the Pharaoh, believed to be both ruler and divine guardian of cosmic balance. Obedience to the Pharaoh was not political loyalty, but a sacred duty tied to the survival of all. Law, religion, and governance merged into a single system designed to suppress chaos at every level. Hierarchy defined Egyptian life, assigning every person a fixed role within the larger social order. Stability mattered more than innovation, and tradition was treated as proof of correctness and legitimacy. Change was viewed with suspicion, as deviation risked angering the gods and disrupting harmony. Rituals reinforced obedience, reminding citizens daily that order was sacred and disorder was dangerous. Temples were not only religious centers, but instruments of administration, storage, and social control. Priests managed calendars, resources, and rituals, ensuring predictability across the kingdom. Written records allowed officials to track labor, harvests, and obligations with meticulous precision. Every harvest, tax, and offering was counted, measured, and recorded to reduce uncertainty. Control over food meant control over people, especially during years when the Nile failed. Those who obeyed the system survived, while those who resisted risked exclusion or punishment. Monumental architecture symbolized permanence, projecting the illusion of an unchanging order. Pyramids were not displays of vanity, but statements that authority would outlast any individual life. Thousands labored not for wages, but for stability promised in this life and the next. In Egypt, freedom mattered less than predictability, and predictability meant survival. This belief shaped a civilization that endured for millennia, at a cost rarely questioned at the time. Agriculture formed the backbone of Egyptian power, tightly regulated by the state and religious authority. Farmers worked land, technically owned by the gods, reinforcing dependence on centralized control. Grain stores were monitored carefully, allowing redistribution during famine and reinforcing obedience. Labor was organized through corvée systems, mobilizing massive workforces when the state demanded it. Workers were assigned roles not by choice, but by obligation to the social order. Large projects trained populations to accept coordination, discipline, and long-term sacrifice. The economy prioritized stability over efficiency, favoring predictability instead of innovation. Trade existed, but remained supervised to prevent disruption of established hierarchies. Markets were not free spaces, but regulated environments shaped by authority and tradition. Craftsmen served temples and elites, producing goods aligned with religious and political needs. Knowledge was preserved by scribes, an elite class trained to record, calculate, and administer control. Literacy became a gatekeeper of power, separating rulers from those they governed. Scribes tracked taxes, labor, and property, transforming people into measurable units. Numbers replaced individuals, allowing the state to manage populations with increasing precision. Justice reinforced hierarchy, offering protection primarily to those aligned with authority. Punishments were public, serving as warnings rather than tools of rehabilitation. Fear educated faster than mercy, embedding obedience deep into collective memory. Religion justified inequality by framing social roles as divinely assigned. Questioning authority was equivalent to questioning the cosmic order itself. This belief system discouraged rebellion long before force was required. Military power existed, but internal stability mattered more than constant expansion. Egypt preferred endurance over conquest, valuing continuity above territorial ambition. Foreign threats were absorbed slowly, maintaining internal equilibrium whenever possible. This patience allowed Egypt to survive while more aggressive states collapsed. Order became the civilization's greatest strength, and eventually its greatest limitation. Succession followed bloodlines, reducing uncertainty and preventing power struggles from destabilizing the state. Pharaohs were prepared from birth, trained to embody authority rather than challenge existing structures. Change occurred slowly, filtered through tradition to avoid disrupting balance. Innovation was tolerated only when it reinforced stability, not when it threatened hierarchy. This caution preserved continuity, but limited adaptation to emerging challenges. Foreign technologies and ideas were adopted selectively, often long after their introduction elsewhere. Egypt's isolation protected it from chaos, but also delayed transformation. As surrounding regions evolved faster, Egypt relied increasingly on legacy systems. Administrative routines hardened into ritual, resistant to reform. Officials prioritized maintaining order over solving emerging inefficiencies. Corruption appeared, but was tolerated if it preserved outward stability. Power became performative, focused on symbolism rather than responsiveness. Monumental construction continued, even as resources strained beneath the surface. The image of eternal strength masked growing internal fragility. Environmental shifts began disrupting agricultural predictability. Flood patterns changed, undermining the reliability of food systems. Economic pressure increased as surplus declined. The state responded by tightening control rather than adapting structure. Greater demands were placed on labor and taxation. Public trust weakened as hardship spread unevenly. Belief sustained obedience, but belief alone could not restore stability. Local officials gained influence as central authority strained. Unity eroded quietly rather than through dramatic collapse. Egypt declined not from invasion alone, but from inflexibility. A system built for permanence struggled to survive a changing world. Egypt's rigid systems created stability, but they also limited flexibility during times of crisis. Power depended on maintaining divine authority, making adaptation difficult when beliefs were challenged. Natural disasters like droughts weakened confidence in rulers, claimed to control cosmic balance. When the Nile failed to flood, famine exposed the limits of ritual and centralized planning. Priests and officials struggled to explain suffering within a system built on divine certainty. Foreign invasions increased as neighboring powers developed new military technologies. Egypt's slow adaptation made it vulnerable to faster, more flexible rivals. Internal corruption eroded trust in institutions meant to preserve order and harmony. Local governors gained influence, weakening centralized authority over distant regions. Economic strain reduced the state's ability to fund monuments and large labor projects. As resources declined, loyalty became harder to maintain through tradition alone. Repeated invasions fragmented control and disrupted long-standing administrative systems. Foreign rulers adopted Egyptian symbols but ruled with different priorities. The illusion of eternal stability slowly collapsed under political and economic pressure. Egypt became a province rather than a dominant power in the ancient world. Its systems survived culturally, but no longer controlled destiny. Order preserved Egypt for millennia, but could not guarantee survival forever. Stability delayed collapse, yet resistance to change ensured it eventually arrived. The same rigidity that built greatness limited recovery from disruption. Egypt's decline was gradual, not sudden, shaped by accumulated weaknesses. Control without adaptation proved insufficient against shifting realities. Belief sustained power, but belief alone could not stop transformation. Institutions outlived rulers, yet lost authority over outcomes. History reveals how endurance can mask vulnerability beneath order. Egypt's legacy endures as a lesson in power, belief, and limits. If you enjoy exploring history beyond the myths, consider subscribing for more documentaries like this. And as always, thank you for watching.